In this one valley, there is a wall that shrugs off earthquakes that flatten cathedrals. A fountain that has run for 5 centuries from a source nobody has found. A bridge woven from grass cut down and reborn every single June. And above the city, a fortress built from 100-ton stones fitted so tightly that no blade slips between them by an empire that never wrote a single word. The Spanish took that fortress in one bloody night in 1536. It cost them the conqueror's own brother. Then they spent 400 years failing to understand what they had won, and tonight, this countdown ends inside it. These are 10 ancient structures in Cusco that no one can fully explain. Number 10. The wall you can touch. Walk down a narrow lane in central Cusco called Hatinrumiak, past the souvenir shops, and run your hand along the wall on your right. You are touching the palace of an Inca ruler. And halfway down the block you will find its celebrity, a single block carved with 12 distinct angles, every one locking flawlessly into its neighbors like a puzzle piece the size of a washing machine. Here is the question that stone forces. Why make life that hard? 12 angles means 12 edges that all have to fit at once without mortar in stone shaped by people using harder stones as hammers. The answer appears every few decades and it is violent. This valley is earthquake country. In 1650, a quake flattened colonial Cusco, and again in 1950, another one brought down churches, arches, and balconies by the block. Both times when the dust cleared, the Inca walls underneath were still standing, almost untouched. Those interlocking angles let a wall shudder, dance, and settle back into place. The Spanish built on top of Inca foundations to humiliate them. The earthquakes have been grading both civilizations ever since, and the score is not close. What nobody has found is the instruction manual. No drawings, no measurements, no written method, because this empire kept no writing we can read. Remember that, because it becomes the biggest problem on this list. You can touch number 10 on a public street. Number 9, you have to duck underground to see, and what happened down there ran in channels. Number 9's the carved labyrinths. On a hillside just above the city sits Qenko, and calling it a building is wrong. Nothing was built here. An entire outcrop of living bedrock was carved, hollowed, and sculpted in place. Staircases to nowhere, seats facing the sky, zigzag channels cut into the upper surface, and beneath it all, a cave opened through the rock containing a carved table of stone. The zigzags give the site its name, which means labyrinth or zigzag, and they give it its mystery. Pour liquid at the top and it snakes down the channels, splitting and turning before draining away. What did the priests pour? The polite theory says chicha, the sacred corn beer, red for omens as it flowed. The darker theory says blood, from llama sacrifice, or possibly not only llama. And that stone table underground in the cold and the dark, many researchers read it as an embalming slab where the bodies of the dead, perhaps of emperors, were prepared for the afterlife. The Inca did not bury their greatest rulers. They mummified them, kept them in their palaces, fed them, consulted them, and carried them through the streets on festival days. So this modest hill may be where the line between the living and the dead was professionally managed. No inscription confirms any of it, and the channels have been dry for 500 years. Had you heard of Qenko before tonight? Tell us in the comments. Number 8 has the opposite problem. It never went dry, and that is the mystery. Number 8, the fountain that won't stop. Listen before you look, and you will find number 8 by sound alone. In a fold of the hills above Cusco, water has been falling musically over carved stone day and night for more than 5 centuries. This is Tambamache, the so-called bath of the Inca. Terraced walls of fine masonry, niches for idols or mummies, and spring water emerging from the rock through sculpted spouts, still flowing at an almost constant rate, wet season or dry. Think about what a fountain needs to run for 500 years without maintenance. A source that never fails, channels that never clog, and flow control good enough to survive 20 generations of neglect. The Inca managed it with no pumps and no pipes in the modern sense, just an understanding of the mountain's hidden water so precise that hydraulic engineers still discuss where exactly this water comes from and how the system regulates itself. The visible spouts are the end of a design that begins somewhere inside the hill, and that beginning has never been fully mapped. The Spanish chroniclers said the site was a royal retreat where the emperor bathed. Perhaps. It is also positioned beside a shrine to water itself in a religion where springs were alive. Either way, the machine still runs. Its makers are 5 centuries gone, and their faucet has never once been turned off because nobody knows where the tap is. Water that will not stop. Number 7 is a set of giant rings in the earth that may have been a machine of a different kind, one that grew food. Number 7, the rings in the earth. From the air, Moray looks like something struck the planet. Enormous circular bowls sunk into a high plateau, lined with concentric stone terraces descending like an amphitheater, the largest over 100 meters deep from rim to floor. Climb down and the strangeness turns physical. The temperature changes as you descend. Between the top terrace and the bottom, measurements have found differences of many degrees, with the deepest rings sheltered, sun-trapped, and noticeably warmer, and each level holds imported soil and its own microhumidity. Which is why one famous theory calls Moray an agricultural laboratory, a place where Inca farmers simulated different altitudes ring by ring, testing crops at each level and adapting seed for an empire that farmed everywhere from Pacific desert to freezing highland. This was a civilization that domesticated thousands of varieties of potato. Somewhere, that expertise was engineered, and Moray looks suspiciously like the campus. But be honest about the evidence, because this entry stays on the list for a reason. The laboratory theory is a modern reading, not an Inca statement. Other researchers see a ceremonial site, terraces for ritual rather than research, its rings echoing the sacred geometry of the mountains around it. Excavations found soils and drainage, not lab notes. Like everything else this empire built, Moray works beautifully and explains nothing. A farm, a temple, or both at once. Number 6 was unquestionably a temple, the richest room on the continent, and the story of how it was emptied is one of history's greatest crime scenes. Number 6, the Golden Temple under the church. Picture Cusco in 1533. Spanish soldiers are inside Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, the holiest place in the Andes, working with pry bars. The walls are sheathed in plates of gold, hundreds of them, and the Spaniards are levering them off one by one to melt for a king's ransom, the price demanded for the captured Emperor Atahualpa. Chroniclers describe a garden in this temple where corn stalks, llamas, and even lumps of soil were rendered in gold and silver. All of it went into the furnaces. The emperor was executed anyway. Then the Spanish built the church and convent of Santo Domingo directly on top of the gutted temple, and accidentally set up the longest-running experiment in engineering history. The earthquake of 1650 wrecked the church, the Inca walls beneath held. The earthquake of 1950 wrecked the rebuilt church. The Inca walls held again, including a famous curved wall, smooth as a ship's hull, that tourists now photograph precisely because the colonial building around it kept falling off. And Coricancha was more than a treasury. Spanish records describe invisible lines, sects, radiating from this temple like spokes, 41 of them, organizing hundreds of shrines around Cusco into a giant calendar and map of obligations, with families responsible for each shrine. The city itself was an instrument, and this temple was the pin at its center. The records of that system were kept on knotted cords. Hold that thread. It is about to matter. If a temple that keeps beating its own conqueror's church deserves it, tap the like button. Number 5 is Inca engineering that is not a ruin at all, because every single year it is born again. Number 5, the bridge that must be reborn. Men are hanging over a river gorge on cables made of grass. This is not the past. It happens every June, a few hours from Cusco, where the last Inca rope bridge, the Sacsayhuaman, spans the Apurimac River. 4 local communities gather, hundreds of families, each bringing armfuls of twisted mountain grass. Over several days, they braid cords into ropes and ropes into cables thick as a leg, cut down last year's bridge, and weave the new one, working outward from both cliffs, suspended over the drop, until the 2 teams meet in the middle. They have done this nearly every year without fail for around 500 years, since the empire, when bridges like this one hung by the hundreds across the Andes and specialist keepers maintained each one. Chroniclers report that Spanish horsemen, meeting chasms crossed only by swaying grass, sometimes crawled over on hands and knees while local porters walked past them upright. Here is what makes Sacsayhuaman belong on this list. It is a masterpiece with a built-in expiry date. Grass rots. The engineering survives only because the knowledge survives, parent to child, and the knowledge survives only because 4 villages refuse to let it die. Every other structure tonight is stone pretending to be eternal. This one is the opposite, fragile on purpose and therefore still alive, and the world recently got the proof. In 2020, the pandemic stopped the gathering, and within a year the neglected bridge sagged and fell into the canyon. The next June, the 4 communities came back and wove it again from nothing. Skip 1 year and the bridge dies, show up and it is reborn. Quick pause at the halfway point and the bridge makes the point for me. Things last only if people keep showing up. If this channel is your kind of place, subscribe because it genuinely keeps us standing. Now into the sacred valley where the stones got tired. Number 4, the tired stones. At Ollantaytambo, a fortress temple climbs a mountainside in giant terraces, and at its summit stands a wall of 6 pink granite monoliths, each the height of 2 men, so tightly joined that the wall reads as one sheet of stone, and the site is visibly unfinished. Blocks lie mid-carve, ramps end in air, as if the workers downed tools one afternoon and never came back. Now the part that hurts to think about. The quarry for that pink granite is not on this mountain. It is on the opposite side of the valley, kilometers away and high on the far slope, which means every monolith was cut, lowered down one mountain, hauled across the valley floor, taken across the river, and dragged up switchback ramps you can still see. Scattered along that route lie enormous blocks that never arrived. The locals long ago gave them a name that archaeologists still use, piedras cansadas, the tired stones. They lie where they were abandoned mid-journey, like a procession frozen in place. Ollantaytambo also holds a rare distinction. The Spanish lost here. In 1536, Manco Inca's forces held these terraces, rained projectiles onto the conquistadors below, then opened water channels and flooded the plain, bogging the cavalry to their horses' bellies and forcing a full Spanish retreat. The fortress that engineering built, engineering defended. Why was it never finished? War, civil strife, the collapse of the world that ordered it. The tired stones simply mark the exact moment a civilization's music stopped. And a promise about what comes next. Number 2 is not Machu Picchu, because Machu Picchu is number 3. Number 3, the city the conquerors never found. A Yale lecturer is inching across a bridge of thin logs lashed together above the rapids of the Urubamba River, sometimes on hands and knees. It is July 1911. His name is Hiram Bingham. His guide is a local farmer who agreed to show him ruins for a small payment, and the climb ahead is a near-vertical slope of cloud forest that locals warned him was thick with snakes. At the top, a barefoot boy from one of the 2 farming families living up there leads him along a ridge, and the jungle opens onto Machu Picchu. Here is the astonishing part. The Spanish never did this climb. In nearly 300 years of occupation obsessed with Inca gold, they apparently never found this city. It appears in no clear colonial record, was never looted by them, never got a church planted on it. When the empire fell, Machu Picchu simply faded from the outside world's knowledge, while local farmers went on planting its terraces. Which leaves the questions. The leading scholarship reads it as a royal estate of the Emperor Pachacuti, a mountaintop retreat for the court. But it is a retreat with temples, observatories, a stone that tracks the sun, and water engineering so good that its spring-fed fountains still run in sequence down 16 basins. And nobody can say with certainty why it emptied. No battle, no burning. Its people walked away around the time the old world was collapsing, and the last ones to know its original name took it with them. The most famous ruin on Earth is a city with no biography. Which of tonight's sites would you most want to stand in at sunrise? Tell us in the comments and stay put, because number 1 is the fortress from the start of this video, and its walls are hiding a confession. First, number 2. The thing that connected this city to everything else, and possibly the largest thing any ancient civilization ever built. Number 2, the empire's nervous system. Stretch a measuring line along every road the Inca built, and you pass 40,000 kilometers, a network longer than the circumference of the planet, thrown across some of the worst terrain on Earth. Coastal desert, cloud forest, passes above 5,000 meters. Stone stairways climbed cliffs. Grass bridges like Sacsayhuaman crossed the gorges, and along the road stood relay stations for the chasqui, runners who carried messages in sprints station to station. The story goes that fresh fish from the Pacific reached the emperor's table in Cusco, high in the Andes, within 2 days. Now the detail that turns a road network into a mystery. Every empire that ran anything like this, Rome, Persia, China, ran it on writing. Ledgers, dispatches, laws. The Inca ran the Western Hemisphere's largest empire, its warehouses, censuses, and armies with no writing that we can read. What the chasqui carried, and what the warehouses were counted with, were quipu, cords of knotted strings in different colors, twists, and knot types, some holding hundreds of hanging strands, an entire archive you could roll up and carry. Around 1,000 survive in museums and collections. Scholars long ago cracked their numbers, a full decimal system in knots. But chroniclers insist quipu also held histories, laws, even letters, and that layer, the stories in the strings, has never been deciphered. The Spanish, suspecting idolatry, burned quipu in heaps. So the manual for everything on this list may have existed after all, knotted, not written. We are not missing an empire's records. We are holding them by the hundred, and we cannot read them. Hold that thought as we climb one last hill. Number 1 is where the empire's stonework made its final argument, and where the argument is still winning. Number 1, the walls that ate the evidence. Finish the night from the start of this video. The Spanish take the fortress above Cusco, Sacsayhuaman, at terrible cost. Juan Pizarro dead of a slingstone wound, and on the last tower, a nobleman remembered as Cahuide, who, rather than surrender, wraps his cloak around himself and steps off the top. When the fighting ends, the Spanish finally get to walk what they have captured, and you can still take that walk today. 3 tiers of zigzag ramparts where every few steps the wall juts and folds, so an attacker's shield side is always exposed. The disbelief in the chronicles starts immediately. The walls run hundreds of meters, assembled from boulders the size of rooms, the largest estimated at well over 100 tons. Each one unique, many-angled, and fitted to its neighbors with the precision of the 12-angle stones scaled up to monstrous size. No mortar anywhere. Chroniclers wrote that it seemed the work of demons since men could not have raised such stones. Garcilaso de la Vega, son of an Inca princess, recorded that colonists once tried to move a single abandoned block with 20,000 native laborers and that it broke loose and crushed thousands of them. Take the number as a chronicle's number, but take the point, even moving one stone downhill defeated them. So the Spanish did something telling. They used Sacsayhuaman as a quarry. For generations, colonial Cusco, its churches and mansions, was built from the fortress's smaller stones, cart by cart, until perhaps 4/5 of it was gone. What stopped them was not conscience, it was mass. The stones that remain today are, by and large, simply the ones too enormous to steal. The fortress the Inca built defeated its destroyers by being unliftable, and in doing so it ate the evidence. The upper courses that might have shown us more of the method went into church walls. How were 100-ton stones moved kilometers, raised, and scribed to fit like jigsaw pieces? Ramps, rollers, ropes, hammerstones, and patience say the sober reconstructions and experiments have moved modest blocks that way. But the full method, the thing itself, was in the hands of masons who died in the wars and plagues, and perhaps in the knots of quipu that went into Spanish fires. The walls keep the answer the way they survived the earthquakes, by never giving an inch. That is why it tops this list. Not because it is the biggest mystery in the Andes, but because it is the one that fought, won, was looted for 400 years, and still refuses to explain itself. Next June, the bridge over the Apurimac will be cut down and rewoven by hand. The walls of Sacsayhuaman will not have moved a millimeter. Between those two facts sits everything this city has to teach. So pick a side in the comments. Which is the greater engineering, stone built to last forever, or a grass bridge designed to die every year and be reborn? One is a monument, the other is a heartbeat. Tell us which you would rather leave behind. If you liked watching this video, consider subscribing to the channel and pushing the like button. I'll see you in the next one.